Well, Jeremy, cheers, welcome.
Cheers. Thank you.
Well, first of all, as always, who is Jeremy Mann and what the hell are you doing in Menorca?
Jesus. Here teaching the workshop for you guys because of your brilliant idea to bring artists here, which, by the way, the place is amazing, as you know, and as we've said, I think perfect place to have an artist workshop where everyone is just sort of stuck on a farm in a beautiful area with a beautiful inspirational building to stay in and teach, so best place for it. And we're just here bringing our vision / version of what we think artists need to know, try, do, and believe in order to become better artists. So it's not, I know it's not a typical workshop, and that's how we like it, because an artist's life is not a typical life. So we try and change it as best as we can, and it is a really boot campish sort of way, because I'm kind of an asshole sometimes, which is great because I think that's necessary and lacking in the world of art, the critique and education. So, but also, you know, with hugs afterwards, and it all seems to usually go well.
Yeah, I guess it was. People were really happy and interested about it. And actually, you talked about many things because, I mean, you do, of course, painting, but you also do cinema, you also do photography. And how do you balance all of that in your life? I mean, your priorities, how do you get enough time for everything?
I mean, luckily, not luckily, but I have conditioned my life to be that way. That was one of the things we were inspiring everybody to do, which most people come to workshops with a situation where they can't, or are not yet the artist, the full-time artist, where it's not a full-time job, it's a lifestyle, and they want to get to that point. So I can come and inspire them how I got there with the, you know, hard life-changing decisions that it took me to get to the point where now it's not a difference between photography and film and art. It's just, I'm fully immersed in the things I love doing. I guess that translates to artist lifestyle. But yeah, it took, you know, it took incredible preparation, like logical preparation, to save up, to put myself in a situation where I would have to earn this lifestyle by working hard as an artist, but also, you know, intelligent saving up the money so that you could take that leap outside of the 9 to 5 or outside of the conditions you're in if you're not yet a full-time artist or fully as an artist. So we were trying to inspire them that, you know, it's not just that easy. You don't just come into it. You have to put that desire on the board in your head and just make that your goal, and whatever it takes, and it does take life-changing decisions, which is scary for a lot of people. So hopefully, you know, being in that position now, I can show them, like, it is possible. You just have to prove it to yourself. And hopefully they will prove it to themselves that they can do it once they get there. And then someone will ask them, like, how did you get to this lifestyle? Like, God, it just naturally evolved because it was what they wanted.
Yeah, actually they were very amazed of how active and how many things you did. Because, well, I told you that in this interview it's going to be a bit different because we asked the students to write some questions down for you. So most of this interview is going to be based on their questions. And one of the things they're usually interested in, because of saying that you do so many things, is like, what is a normal day like for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is just a normal day, and it's completely abnormal, sitting in a chapel, you know, having wine across the table with a skull in Menorca on an island in Spain is mind-blowing, and every so often I stop and go, holy shit, that's pretty awesome, and which I was telling them to do sometimes when we were, you know, doing some of the exercise, and like, you guys, this is pretty awesome. So a normal day, yeah, I mean, I have my normal studio in my house, and I go in there and I create, and I wake up and I go and create, and then I have, you know, every artist has those waves of lows, highs, and being in charge of that, or being able to see when I'm getting tired painting, I'm going to start making the wrong motions and the wrong movements, and I'm going to ruin what I'm working on. So I go either blow out some energy, either running around as fast as I can a lake with music and just screaming in my head, and come back completely relaxed and, you know, meditate and start the day over again. And maybe I don't want to go back, and maybe I'm not in the space in my head to paint. So I'll go and build something in the basement and in the workshop, because I need a hands-on, I need that sort of like hands-on mechanical and logical and scientific thinking of, you know, jotting down formulas and figuring out how to build my own cameras and night vision goggles, and or building a set in the backyard to film in, you know, big heavy hand lifting stuff that isn't so much emotional creativity, but is another sort of creativity. And then all of a sudden the day ends, and you just sort of get exhausted and more exhausted, and then we make a point in our days to, you know, chill out. And it's just, we'll find a film that's weird and different and inspiring, candles, wine, and just relax the brain and let it feed, let it get inspiration, because you will burn out. And I have burned out many times from trying to, like, worrying about a deadline or a show I have to put on, which is what I'm trying to condition my life to now, not worry about. Which again is just putting something in the way where I won't have to worry about a deadline, so that I can create better things. So that's a normal day, wherever that happens in the world, and be it, you know, traveling in a foreign country or at home in the Bay Area in California. A normal day is just doing whatever I feel is inspiring, and also creating something. But also being in charge of, you know, knowing when to relax and enjoy the world around you. It's incredibly important.
In fact, some students encourage you, and their question is to learn piano.
Oh, me to the? Oh, I don't have the time. I tried, but it's like once I got in, because when I'm listening to music, painting, I'll be painting in the same motions, and then I just stop sometimes and I don't know what I'm doing, so I look like a fool, which is why I'm in my studio, because in my studio I look like a fool all the time, which is great. I would love to, because you know, there's a relationship between painting, art, visual art, and music, in the same way there is with music, visual art, and poetry. So I feel like it's just a different language. And when I was trying to learn it, I realized, shit, it is a completely different language. And I've tried learning Italian, and I can be okay. You know, talking to the Italians at the workshop, they were like, "Oh, you can." I'm like, "No, I don't. I know like 5 nice phrases." And then, you know, trying to study Russian just by driving around Russia, looking at the stop signs and seeing it spelled this way, it's like, okay, I'll never understand that, but it's possible because people speak Italian and Russian. People play the piano, you know, and I'm sure if you talk to a musical composer, like a great pianist of the past, I bet at some point, you know, they wanted to learn how to paint, or maybe they even tried to draw, but I guarantee you they loved it just as much, because rhythm, balance, harmony, it's all the same words. It's just, once I realized it's going to take as much effort to learn piano as it does someone to learn painting, I realized I don't have 5 days in one. I can only get like a maximum of 2 days in one. So it's just, I let that go. Maybe I don't want it. Maybe I don't need to learn it. I'll just enjoy it, and I'll pretend I know in my head that I can play. But I have a piano, and when I was working on the film, I was trying to create my own music for it. I got so close, you know. I was like, I would just try and find notes that worked with the things I heard in my head. Which it's like, if you know how to mix color, it's really easy to find that blue. But if you don't, you're going to be like this, and that's how I was with the keyboard. So, but what I was doing also was writing down the notes on the, because that's, you know, another way you have to learn music is by writing it on the staff. You know, that's the anatomy to the abstract painting. You have to know those things. So when I did that, I also saw a pattern in the way I was writing the notes because of the spacing and all that stuff. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to start a painting based off of that layout of notes. And I know exactly where it is in the painting, and it actually made a better shape arrangement. And so again, I was like, oh, I'm onto something, but I don't have the time for it.
So you don't lose your passion for learning. You gave a lot of information about books, about a lot of things, that the people should read. And one of the things they ask is like, tell us 3 books, like your 3 top books. For yeah.
I have no idea. I wish I read more, and only currently I know the books that I've read in the last year that have been inspired. Like the Art Spirit is one that I have it with me, carried it the whole time, because that's just sort of like a general understood, that is an art book that everyone should have. I mean, there's things in there that don't work for everybody, but there's a lot in there. There's so much in there that it's the same as just being curious about everything and being open to both sides of things. The other books that I would recommend, I mean, other than, what else do I have that I carry? My own book, not meaning I wrote a novel, but my journal. I guess if they really want to know, and I'm probably assuming they're going to expect one of those answers, my own journal, because, you know, writing down constantly was something I was telling them to do, and you have to write, get it down. I've been writing down my dreams, I've been writing down my thoughts, even jokes, anything that's interesting to me is important, almost more so to learn from than just to get it out, both of those things. So that's the second one, and the third one, I mean, I don't know. It's like asking to give 3 things is too much. And if they were to ask that in person, of course, I'd be like, what do you mean 3? All of them, all books, whatever you're interested in, all books, whatever you're interested in, because it's the curiosity of wanting to know more information about anything. And books are the greatest place to find it. I mean, artists rarely write about art. Writers do. But there's 1,000 million books out there on any subject, and in there somewhere is something inspiring to everyone. So yeah, just read all books.
Yeah, I guess it's all related. I mean, like, do you separate like your private life and your professional life, or it's been an artist as like a full-time job? Well, how do you live it? Do you separate sometimes? Like, oh, I'm gonna stop doing art, being an artist, and then just having my privacy, my private life, just leave all the art aside? Do you have this kind of moments?
Not really. I mean, other than like keeping my own, if you say private life versus art life, and I guess that comes a lot from people having job and things they love to do. Luckily, as an artist, I love what I do, and I don't consider it a job, but I do have a private side, as everyone does, that I don't need wrapped up in all of the exposure. And I mean, that's why I'm a very private person. I don't like put photos of myself all over the place. And when I go to openings, you know, I'll go and I talk to everybody, but I like to keep, and everyone's like, some people say like, we don't know what you look like, but now of course everyone does, but like, what's your private life like? And it's like, that's my private life. And if you're my friend, you have an idea of what it is, because I'm open to letting people into my life, but it's like, I don't need it to be something that I need attention for. It's very much, you know, especially as an artist in the studio, that's a private stage, and whatever I do in there is so private to me that when anyone comes in there, first of all, like, to get through the gate of the front house, you have to at least be a good person, and anyone we let in the house and then into the studio, it's, you know, it's an awkward moment. It's like sort of opening up your diary, but you know, there's cues and signs all over the studio that I'm aware of, that I'm sure they just see as objects and interesting things, but you know, nobody will ever get into the heart of this or this, except really trusted, you know, partners and friends. So I don't keep it from people. It's just, that's, you know, a part of life. It's just, I have that inside, and whatever comes out, and usually it's seen in the art.
And well, I guess that having an artist partner as well helps to get it all together as a whole mood going on, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you don't keep anything from, it's like, it's almost constant. There is no turn off, come home, like, well, now we talk about normal stuff. It's just constant. It's so consistent, in fact, that there's a special word in the house when it's just like, okay, no more fucking art. no more art talk. We just need to stop because our brains are constantly, and we value the idea of just turning off that subconscious servant and letting it absorb. So it's like, okay, we gotta stop. Otherwise, you'll be trying to sleep like this. And I have, like, you know, unfortunately tried to go to bed and you just, fuck, you have a thought and you have to write it down, otherwise I'm gonna regret it. But yeah, having someone that trusted who understands you, you know, as an artist, it makes life so much better. In my opinion, you know, we had that conversation with a bunch of the students, the attendees. You know, what if your partner is not interested in your art? And is that okay? And it's like, well, I don't know. That's for them to decide. But you know, it doesn't mean they're uninterested in you. It's but it does make it easier, in my opinion, for myself, to have somebody who completely understands me, or if not completely, at least is on the same path somewhere. So.
And what is it that you admire the most about her as an artist, for her art?
Imagination. I have none of it. The things that come out of her head as imagination, creativity, ideas, these creatures, these, you know, coming from the concept art world where they just bash ideas in 1,000 ways to get new ones. You know, I do that on a small level, and I'm very emotional. I'm very atmospheric and emotional. I don't really harbor on storytelling, and her lifestyle comes from a lot of storytelling, which it's great because it's the same realm, but it's like I don't understand that part. And like I was saying, that's how the whole film The Conductor came, was because she had a 1-minute idea that when that story fed to me became, in my mind, this other whole world. And I couldn't have done that on my own. So, so much so that I realized if I'm going to do any more films, I need a story, I need a world, and I'm not good at storytelling, and I'm not good at that sort of stuff. And after I did the film, I always wondered, I wonder what now putting my fingers in storytelling is going to do to my paintings in the future, or my photography. Because there's not really a storytelling element in mine. Hers has incredible storytelling, and you know, characters and persons, and because of the place she came from, theater, Russia, growing up. Mine was, you know, alone interior spaces in my own, you know, collecting animal heads doesn't make you, you know, have many friends, but it, you know, at that time, now it does. I wish I still did it. So yeah, 2 different lifestyles, same belief, same mentality, just it's like a swirl, as opposed to just 2 static lives.
And well, let's say, like, at this point as an artist, what it is that you believed in when you were a student and that you no longer believe in?
That's a good question. So what did I believe as a student?
That you no longer
believe in. Let me think. That I would sum it up as that there is only a specific way to do something. You know, because when you're a student, and it's sort of how it has to be, when you're a student, in order to learn, the teacher has to tell you as much as they can to get you to do something right. So when it comes to something, you know, basic, so like figure drawing, they can only tell you their way of knowing it, you know, how to draw a figure. Because if they start to tell you there's a million ways to do it, the student will get lost. And I know as a student, I was there and I was like learning how to, and I know because I know my teachers. In fact, I can look back through my artwork and tell you who taught me that class because I was drawing or painting like that teacher, which is good at that time. But I no longer believe in that's the only way to do it. It's not like they said this is the only way. Some people do. Some people say you must have this pencil and you must have these paints and you must work on this surface. And I no longer believe that that's important. Like I was trying to do with my thesis, it was I believe that it's what's in here and what works best, what materials, what way of living works best with how you want to make your statement. Whether your statement is simple or overarching complex, whatever works best for you is what you need. And so in order to find that, you have to try everything. But you can't just go into the world trying everything. You know, I did that. I had my undergrad where it was just do whatever you want. And it was great. But then I was still lost when I graduated. So I went and learned how to draw and paint and get that education. But the whole time I remembered, like, when halfway through that education, I realized this isn't the only way to do it. This isn't. I need to find my own way to do it. And I think that's what put me where I am now, was that realization that you have to learn those things. And you have to realize that's the only way to learn those things at that time from that one teacher. But go elsewhere and explore for yourself, because it's the personality in an artist that makes their work the best. And if it's covered up with, you know, rules and materials that you can only use, then it's just going to homogenize everything. And it's always, you know, here's a homogeneous group of artists, and then here's the one you remember, because they broke out and followed their own personality, their own style, their own way of saying whatever poetry was in their head with whatever materials worked best. And that's how they broke away from the homogenization of artists that will just sort of be, they may be great, they may be good, but they'll be the ones that you never hear about or have been forgotten. Even though they may have lived a great life, they're never going to be the ones that shine through, you know, the artists that you can count on your hands, that you love from the past or that you see now. So yeah, that's what I stopped believing in at the right time.
Yeah. And is there anything else you're happy you left on the way since that student's times?
Oh, my mom's gonna hate me, but home. Meaning, I mean, unless I'm taking the question of, I know what you're asking, and I know what the students are asking, and I'm taking it literally, but answering it also figuratively, like leaving home, having the desire to explore the world. I never was invited or told to travel abroad. I was never like given books about Italy or other countries. And for some reason, after my first solo show with John Pence, when I felt like, you know, I remember having that solo show and then coming home and just being like, well, I guess that was it. What do I do now? I guess, do I start painting more stuff? And it was this weird transitional state that I realized, no, I'm gonna go to Italy on my own. I don't know why I made that decision, other than like at that point I felt that need, and I loved the images and the ideas of Italy, so I just decided I will go. And I had I'm a very good planner, so I planned 3 weeks, and I had a great time until 2 weeks, and then I came home, and I paid extra money to get a new ticket, because it's just like, it was so much new, and ever since then, I have always wanted and always tried to just go travel, because I need new inspiration. And it was the idea that just because I'm where I'm at now may not be where I want to be. And I love home, and I love my friends and family, but I needed to go get more world life experience. And you only get life experience when you put yourself in strange situations. And it's such a beautiful way to grow. I wish they would make that a requirement for every high school everywhere, where they just have to go to 3 strange different countries and they just trade students. And it has to be a requirement so that everybody gets the knowledge of, you're not important. It's hard to get a glass of water when you don't know how to ask for it in a language. Just to see, it makes people more humble. It gives them so many more experiences that they wouldn't have even known were possible. So that's what I'm glad I left, was where I came from, which, sorry, Mom. I'll come back for Christmas. And, you know.
Okay. One interesting thing is like, what is the most interesting thing you've learned lately?
You know, right now I'm very interested in photography and filmmaking, analog photography and filmmaking, and developing my own unique printing process from the Polaroids. And so I had to do research, and my friend helped me learn about circuitry and all these things, and that has been the most, you know, opening mind experience. Also, being in another culture is another opening mind experience with someone I care about. So there's the 2 things, and then the third is like I just right now I'm absolutely mind fucked by ancient cultures, just how they could just be completely forgotten, and nobody knows anything what they actually look like or how it actually worked. And I'm sure there's people who research the hell out of it, But to me, it just blows my mind that those things are forgotten. So luckily being on the Balearic Islands and being in Malta, I had the experience to actually go to one of those things. Like, it's such a geek thing, but that's what I'm really interested in right now. In the same way I was interested in animal heads when I was young. So right now, those are the things that I'm most interested I've learned is because I'm very interested in them. And, we were trying to impart to the attendees that whatever it is you are interested in, just take a bath in it, go absorb everything you can. And so as long as it'll change, and it'll always change, but it becomes a part of you, and those are the things that stick out in my head.
I think you got to be quite methodical for doing all that stuff, because that's another thing that shows up in their questions. It's like Mark Tennant told us that this sentence that I found interesting. He said, like, there's a method to my madness. And so you're quite organized, and is it necessary to have a good organization for going disorganized?
There's like we were telling them, you have to balance both of those things. And if you compare it to how I have my days, like I said, I have the absolutely disorganized, mess-making creativity process, which also is subconscious. And then there's also, I have that need for logical, graph-making, mathematical, figuring out, building. Building is very, if you were to build buildings intuitively, they might be beautiful, but they might fall apart. So I need that structure in order to balance that mad creativity. And just like artists have great highs and incredible lows as a consistent throughout their life, there should also be emotional and logical in order to keep both parts of your brain active and in order to make links between them. If you're just diving into all these creative things, and then logically you sit back and think about it, and you can be like, oh, these are linked together. And then I need to make a pattern to figure that out. It helps push forward life if you balance those things.
Yeah, though I guess you find different sources of inspirations that move you around from one place to the other. I mean, which are your main sources of inspiration?
The things surrounding you in your life, be it physical, like when I was living in San Francisco, I was painting cityscapes. Now I don't, and I'm not going to keep painting cityscapes because it's a fad nowadays. It's like I've done it. I got everything I need from it. I still do it because it's a way to get out my energy and aggression, and that's the only reason I really started it. But now I'm more living in a home where I'm more interior in my head, as well as in just trying to convey emotions and things like that. But also the photography interest has become bigger and bigger and bigger because of that logical desire to just like build something. And so I decided to build camera for whatever reasons. My interest in reference, my ideals that reference is everything, be it mental, life, photograph, it has to be all three of those. Memory is another one. So I realized I need to get better references, which were, how do I make the photography I shoot closer to life, which is important. I hate digital. And so that interest became the cameras, became the where it is now, where now it's a photography. It's an own art form. So the biggest things that are driving my creativity are what I'm surrounded by, which works in like a complete symbiosis with the things you're interested in. Like, it's not like I'm interested in the city. I just was in the city. And it's not like I was just all of a sudden surrounded by a bunch of cameras. I was interested in them. So it works both ways. But yeah, definitely the things you're surrounded by. And everyone always has that statement, paint what you love. Create what you love, because that's, why would you not? And so if what you love is what you're surrounded by, that's a great place to be. If it's not, and what you love is in your head, that's a great place to be too. And not everyone's in the perfect living situation or in the perfect place they want to be, but there's another world in here.
So would you consider moving elsewhere if you have a lack of inspiration?
Oh yeah, and the same as like moving.
Which place would that be?
Anywhere in Europe. Like moving, if you have a lack of inspiration, go get it. And if that just means going out your house and going to a concert, that's an easy travel. If that means going abroad for a month, that's a little bit more involved. If that means moving across the country, I mean, because I don't have I think, as everyone said, home is where you make it. It's where your closest friends are, and if, as an artist, your closest friends are scattered around the world. And that's a great thing. So you have that brotherhood of artists all over the place. And I feel like now it's like, well, why can't I live in another country? They make it seem like it's difficult, and they don't make it easy, the world, to move across. That's a huge step. But for me, it's like, well, I've lived in the city, in a small apartment, I've lived in a house, and what if I lived in a monastery for artists, and which has always been a dream of mine? And what if I go and live in I've proposed this to a gallery once, and a couple guys trying to find one who will actually agree with me. Why can't I just go live in a cabin in the woods without outside influence and see where my art goes? So it is a desire. There is that desire to change your living situation in order to see what it would do to you. Again, those are huge steps seemingly for people to take, but I've done it enough times, once or twice, now that I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. So, but it takes that experience before you realize, oh yeah, I could do that. I can go abroad. I can move around the world. I can travel for a long time.
Well, you talked about a cabin in the woods, but with all the internet and all the social media thing, it might be difficult. How do you find this social media thing? What do you think about it? Is it a tool? Is it more like an obstacle?
I think it's a poison. I really do, and I'm not making that statement just off of a dislike for things. I like very logical, seeing how things work. I just see it, especially for art, going the completely wrong direction. It's convincing young artists of the wrong ideals, and it's also changing artists that I have known and loved and trusted to do things that it's convincing them to do things that I believe don't really respond to their natural personality, because that's what it's made for, to convince people of other things, to keep, advertisements. They put a boob in your face and it makes you want to buy shampoo. And it's just like that kind of stuff, everybody knows how social media and stuff use that kind of thing, and it's all this like dirty talk and all this like subservient like ideals. And it's there, true. It was also an amazing way for artists to share their artwork, which is great. I mean, we now, and this has only happened in the last, 10 years? I mean, I remember when there was no internet. I remember when there was no Instagram and Facebook and no social media. And I remember, and I see now where it's going, and it's going real fast, just like a lot of things. Like, Nadezhda always brings up the idea of how Ford in the car, at the time, when everyone just had horses, it's like, did you need that? Was it good? They had no way to judge. And then it just took off. And now everyone has cars and it's polluting the world. And you're like, okay, maybe we should have thought this through, but you can't do that. Hindsight's always 2020. And I feel like, okay, it's been a couple of years since social media has happened. I think it's now probably time to start thinking with some hindsight in the foreground. Yes, it's great because artists can get exposure, but they have to have some sort of self-respect. I think I kept telling everybody at this workshop, like, that's the most important thing. So when work in progress, WIPs, is a thing that has just started in the last 5 years because of instant sharing, and I don't think that's a good thing, because I think it subconsciously convinces an artist, because there's only likes. So when you as an artist are in the middle of working, it's late at night, you're confused, you're lost, you're struggling on this painting, and you're just like, all I have to do is take a photo of it and post it online, and like at least two, hopefully, up to thousands of people are going to say they like it. It might convince them to stop there. And like I was trying to show everybody within this workshop that you can't hold these things so precious. And if the artists are convinced that this is now a precious, almost finished thing, and everybody reads it, oh my God, stop there. Oh, who's the one telling you that? And so it's just, and that's just one example. you know, I could go on and on and on about the things I think are incredibly wrong with it, especially that people, imagine the future generations where they're born into a world with cell phones and they think that seeing a painting that big is how they've seen it. And when I've walked into museums in Italy, France, and Russia, and I see these paintings at the size, the color, the texture, the light, the quiet, oh, this is not the same, but people are believing that. And I think that's a sad, sad thing. And I just see it heading in a horrible direction.
So I guess you think that the process is related to privacy somehow? It's a private thing, the process of a painting,
well, an artist,
process.
Yeah, an artist is in their studio for long, long periods of time. If they're not comfortable with that, making judgments on their own, having their own response, making their own judgments, based on their own personal values, not the values that are believed as like the majority of taste, which taste is not, then I think it's incredibly important to be alone with yourself and comfortable there. And like in another, like Nadezhda showed the Tarkovsky video where he talks about, and this was years ago, he talks about how young people are slowly becoming not comfortable being alone, and they're filling it with noise. And at that time it might have been music and party and all that crazy stuff, but now it's becoming this visual noise. And you know, standing in front of a painting where the artist painted it. And if you're an artist and nobody's doing that, wouldn't you feel this like something's wrong? You know, and I think I try everything I can to get people to come to an exhibition, not only mine, but others. You know, I've tried. I only sign books in person, and I know there's people who will sign a book and then sell it online for more because it's signed, and I think, well, that's a little bit, I don't think just because I put my name on something it's going to be worth more, you know, but what I want is to meet the people, and I want them to come to get their book signed, and they're like, I've never seen these in person. I'm like, thank God you are here then. But you're sort of fighting a wave, you're throwing rocks at a wave. But I mean, and again, these things, I'm not saying is like, this is just my gut feeling. I do it, I stay off of the Instagram and the social media for a month, and you walk around and you realize, oh my God, this is not going a good way. Like the moment I landed in London when we started this trip in November, I keep saying that, in September, we started in September, we land in London, and it's just everybody who trying to walk around. Everybody is just like this, like this, like this. It's people having cigarette breaks, and they're all like sitting next to each other, like cigarettes, and like you don't even know who's here. Everybody sees the people at the cafes sitting across from each other like this. Like, what is happening? That is not okay. And you only notice this if you're like this. And all the things you see in the world when you're looking up and just being quiet and and seeing things. You know, you need that inspiration.
Somehow awareness is in danger of extinction.
Yes, and awareness is you could say one of the things I base my life on. You know, you could start with that word and then apply it to everything that's important to me. Awareness of yourself, awareness of there's more out there, awareness of what's happening right now. And everybody's values depict what they're aware of. And those values are becoming homogenized. Everyone's awareness is going down.
And as for your own experience, your own process, how do you balance what you know and what you see? I mean, like intuition and method, and how do you balance that?
How to balance intuition and method?
Yeah, like what you know and what you see, because I mean, you were like telling the people, like advising them to draw a lot, like the Redman book and all that stuff. So you know a lot of things, but when you're facing drawing a figure or doing something, is it more about what you know? Is it more about what you see? How do you balance those things?
I think just you have to have the knowledge, but then the other part that's missing is the self-respect for your own values, and whatever those are for people is individual. But the idea of having a self-respect for your own values and just following the things you like, your own interests, which it's easy for people to, follow a fad, and it's hard for people to, like even in this workshop, a lot of people are like, well, I'm so and so, I like this and I like this, and I think they're like, but what were those things? Those things that everyone's very nervous to talk about, like that's them, and we were telling them like you need to harbor that, like that's you, and whatever those are, if you develop that along with the knowledge, they begin to integrate. Everything always integrates, and we tell everyone, research 1,000 things so that you can see links across the farthest gaps that people with narrow-minded research won't see. They'll link between here, but when you research everything you love, you make links across huge gaps. And it's that link which also applies to when you have incredible self-respect for your own values, from incredible interior searching, writing, trusting yourself, and the daily practice. I mean, there's so many ways that we have no time to get into it. Like the daily practice of trusting yourself, your intuition, your gut, followed up with an incredible amount of wisdom, knowledge that it takes to make the right choices. And so when you do look at a figure and you're drawing it, and you know how to draw it, but you want to do it a different way, you can choose. You're not limited by one way of doing it, or you're not limited to just like going crazy because you don't know how to draw. You're not limited to just drawing it accurate because you don't know how to go crazy. You can choose, and then you have variation, and I think it's important, incredibly important.
Maybe people use it to think too much, maybe, because one of the questions that shows up is like, what is the concept behind your artwork? I mean, did people worry too much about that thing, about the concept, about all that kind of stuff?
I think so, because if people ask me, what are you trying to say and what's your concept, I get lost. Like, I don't know. I mean, if I have never really sat down and tried to make a statement about what I'm trying to paint. And that question always comes up in interviews, and I'm like, I better answer with something that makes sense. So I just, I start talking about it, and I go like, yeah, that is but I don't go into it because it's like, I need to create, and I'm just going to trust that whatever my values are going to come out, and that will be my concept, whatever the things I love. I think, when conceptual art came out, and it showed the world that just thinking for 1 million years and then making one mark is just as important. I think that's a radical way, but there's also the people who just learn technique and study so well that they paint without any concept. And I think, like I said, there needs to be a balance of both. So it seems like a lot of young people and like students who are here are worried about, like, what if I'm not smart enough to come up with a big concept? And we're trying to say, but just the concept of simple beauty is overwhelming. And that's okay too.
It's not that much about what you paint, but about how you paint it, isn't it?
Physically or?
Yeah, like technically, I mean, it's not that much about what you paint, but about how you paint it. It doesn't mind if it's a glass of wine, if it's a skull or a figure or a landscape. Something you insisted in when the...
Yeah, okay, I think like when it comes to subject matter, yeah, how you paint it you can see a style across subjects, when you see the same signature, the same writing across subjects, then you have an artist who's an artist, not just a figure artist or a planar artist. I hate when people say, I'm a planar artist, I'm a cityscape artist, not me, themselves. Because it's like, so that's all you can do? Maybe you're limited, which, I hate limitations. But I think if you were to talk about, like, it doesn't matter what you paint, not thinking of it as subject, thinking of it as what you want to paint, your values, like that is important.
Yeah.
And that balanced with technique of your own knowledge, like that makes artist. But yet it doesn't, you should be able to paint anything. And that's a great challenge. It's like, there's this one painting of an asparagus that was done, just an asparagus, by a famous artist. It's in France or something. I don't remember the name. I'm not good at that stuff, but I know what I like, and I remember it very visually. I don't remember names. I don't remember the names of any of the people in the workshop.
Well, Redman actually has a real interest in painting of asparagus.
Really? Yeah, see, it's like something very simple, but the way they painted it is them. And then I remember this painting of a turnip just cut in half. And it's so amazingly done. And when I saw that painting, I looked at that artist's other work. This is a contemporary artist now, who unfortunately I don't think doesn't paint anymore, but it was just a turnip cut in half, painted so well that I looked at his figure work and I'm like, it's the same person. It doesn't matter the subject. It should, your style, your signature should go beyond that. Every person's handwriting is somehow so different that they could be put in jail for it. And yet you see everybody painting in the same way, and it's hard to distinguish different people. So I think it is incredibly important that the way you paint shows through in whatever it is subjectively, but whatever you choose to paint based on your values is so important.
Well, and there's another thing that people is easily interested in, because usually they get blocked or they find themselves in a huge struggle when painting, and is how do you go through these times when you get blocked or when you find yourself in a big struggle?
That's easy. That's when you've exhausted. That's when you're about to have a breakdown. That's when you've exhausted yourself. If you've been like pushing so hard and then you just see it getting worse and worse and worse. And this story comes up everywhere. It comes up everywhere in the art spirit. It comes up in Burge Harrison's landscape book. It comes up in our lives. It's just like you've pushed too far your capacities. You need to fill it back up. And we can feel that coming, and we realize we need to go camping real soon. And you need to go and just have some peace, put the work away. You know, the idea of it being work is such a shitty idea. So you just need to go away from your creativity and absorb more creativity. Go see something inspiring. You know, every time you see something inspiring, no matter how tired you are, you're like, oh, I want to go do now. You need to refill. You need to recharge. And there's whatever it is for everybody. For us, it's peace and quiet of nature, and also amazing, incredible like theater experiences or film on a smaller scale, and you know, going and recharging your batteries is how you. But you have to see it coming. You know, you have to feel it coming before you break.
But I guess that on the other hand, as I've heard from you these days, it's good to focus on the little things and trying to master them. Mm-hmm. Is it? So having like little resources or focusing just some little things, does that help to develop?
Because those little things, which you remove all the like, you know, there's so many problems with painting just in the first place. If you remove all those things and let's just focus on the color harmony thumbnails. I mean, the which we've now termed bunny squares. Because I have the rabbit box, which was my plein air box, rabbit, get it? And then I made a small one for traveling Europe, bunny box, and then I was doing all the little bunny squares. And it's just studying harmony, but it's a meditative thing. You know, it's so meditative that it's easy, but you're still getting through those things. The copying of the anatomy book, you know, it's just turning off all the like hard energy and just getting through it and doing it. Because it's, you know, to get through and do all of that study, if you were to think of it as hard work, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's going to be intense. But if you just do it you light a candle, and when I lived with these roommates who were classical musicians, oh my, they would just like try and compose, they'd play like Bach symphonies and Beethoven and Mozart in the house while I'm sketching, like this is amazing. And of course, when they were done, they're like, okay, guys, we fucked that up. Let's try it again. I'm like, you know, correlation, but also meditative, just doing those little focuses. That's the meditative part while still creating.
So we could say that somehow a messy palette, for instance, is a mirror of a messy mind, or does it not have to do?
Palette and size or palette of color?
No, palette of colors, of how it is organized. I mean, being disorganized in your studio means like you are a disorganized person, or?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and the way I live my life, which is the only way I can describe as best as I can, but I'm also aware of other situations and can use that as examples. I need absolute organization. My palette is always in the same order. My palette's always clean. It's the size I need. You know how you saw how anal I was with my setup, and it's not because I'm that such of a control freak. It's because I've found my way that sings best. You know, I found the tune of the guitar that works best, and so I tune my studio to work that way, and I remove all of these problems. Like if there's a sloppy, dry mess on my palette, I can't mix well. So don't do that. Clean it off, you know. So I made these habits to get those things out of the way. So you would think I'm very organized. Dude, my studio is a mess. It is everything back around there in the studio is a ginormous mess, to the point where like I'll know when I have to clean it because I'm getting frustrated because there's a little path that leads to my easel filled with all the things I just didn't have time to deal with. And it literally is becoming, if you gave it 2 more years, I'd be one of those people like in the Pack Rat Hoarders TV shows where you just have to crawl through and then there's that little place I do. So that's my mind. And when I get to the place where I need to perform, I want it all in tune. And every so often I turn around and think, I need to retune my studio. It's way out of tune. And it affects you mentally.
Sure.
Yeah.
And another thing that shows up is, what about details? I mean, does detailing mean like killing the soul of a painting? Or
oh, in painting?
Yeah.
No, but I think everyone's idea of detail is...
I mean, it's more about suggesting than explaining.
Oh yeah, I mean, my teacher told me like detail is just a bunch of shit in the same area with a lot of information. And you're like, so I have to paint all the garbage cans? He's like, no, it's just a bunch of stuff in the same, trying to like abstract the idea so that people don't pigeonhole it into detail must be tightly rendered information of reality. And in my opinion, detail is when you get the paint to work in such a way that it feels perfectly right, but there's nothing there. You know, for me, like the detail in some of my compositions and cityscape paintings are just 2 headlights in the right spot. That's detail, in my opinion. Or when all the paint's just doing a whole mess of stuff, but it reads right, that's detail. And other areas are lost mentally. You know, like I was telling them, you can only look at one thing, and everything else around it is sort of either out of focus or the contrast. You know, if you're staring at the skull, I can't draw your skull as accurately as this. So in my paintings, it's the same thing. There's an area of detail, and your brain finishes the rest of it, just like the letters in a sentence. So I don't think detail can kill it if you're painting it in the wrong way that doesn't work with the stuff around it. Like I was telling everybody that, you know, this color is only blue because of the things that are around it. And it's only that tone of blue because of the things that are around it. So the moment you mix a color and you put it on and that's the first mark you make, you can't judge shit because there's nothing around it other than a white background, or if it's a tone background, that's the stuff that's around it. So it's all judged on the things that are around it. To say that detail kills it is, I think, only thinking of tightly rendered stuff. Is why they asked that question. And it's, you know, if I had the chance to say that to them, which hopefully they'll be listening, they're like, damn it, he did it again. Like, he avoided our question, but he answered it too. Like, I was telling them, they're thinking the wrong way. Detail is where your mind settles, and it's information that you understand.
Yeah. So I guess that knowing when to stop is one of the most difficult moments in a painting.
Yeah. And I can tell, like there's a thing in my paintings where you're just going crazy, slow down, and I slow down, and I slow down, and that's the moment you're like, uh-oh, is it done? Is it? And you'll never know, because if you did, then why would you do the next one? You know, I feel like it's done, and then you think about it, and you're like, no, I could have done more. But it was wrong from the beginning. So when is it completely finished? I think is when it reads right enough, when it feels right enough. And feeling that with that as my guide point, it also makes so many paintings, it's not that they're not done, it's that they're complete trash. You know, so it's like if you're kicking a dead horse and you're trying to finish this painting and it's just not working, it doesn't mean that more working on it is going to call it done. It's like it was done long ago, like not finished. It was done, dead. So that's a difficult thing to answer. That's always been the quintessential unanswerable question: is like, when is an artist done painting? And I think it's when it feels right.
And well, if we have these paintings already done, then we get to another subject, which is the market. I mean, the galleries, the art market. How do you deal with that? What's your relationship with the art market?
I let the galleries handle that. In the same way that you find images that you like, and you like, I like these images, so you make 1,000 of them, and that's you. Like, I like these. Now, I've trusted that. I like those things. And then I work from those, but I don't go back and question it. So I find a gallerist that hopefully is somebody, you know, I've worked with real shitty galleries, and I've worked with amazing galleries. So I've had all the experiences. And so I try to find a gallerist who listens to me and who then I trust. And then when I can forget about the art market. I think that's a terrible term to even enter into an artist's life, because it makes them worried about financial situations and money. And again, like, it took hours to discuss this in the workshop with people, about how you can't worry about money, but I know that you must, and so you must put something in the way to figure that out for yourself, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. And we went on and talked about that, but also the ability that when you aren't worrying about money, you will create the best things you've ever created, because you're completely free. And so I want to be free, and so I've put things in my place, in my way, that I wouldn't have to try and worry so much about the art market, and I give those things that I love to the people who know how to handle that, the gallerists but once it starts, like, there's always cracks, and it'll come through in emails or conversations, like, oh, money and sell and this, and how do you, whenever I see like how do artists handle the market? Like, artists don't handle the market. Artists handle the market by doing what they love, because they're supposed to be the trusted source. The market is the gallerist's job to convince the public of what good art is, because hopefully that gallery represents the artist and can show the collectors what good art is. Too many times and too much lately, it's working the other way, where gallerists listen to the pockets of the collectors and try to tell the artists what to do. It's not supposed to go that way, and that's a long conversation.
Yeah, because some of them are concerned about how to balance commercial art and fine art. Like, how do they...
those are the people I know who are in that situation.
They may be concerned about the fact of being too into finishing a beautiful painting. Mm-hmm. Like, it can be sold. It can be sold.
It can be sold, yeah.
So they shouldn't worry about that anyway.
No, and I've tried to tell everybody that, like, I know they're in that situation, that they have to work at a job, it may be art related, to create something or do a commission or do something for that. And I think that's going to hurt them subconsciously. I only say these things because I've had the same experiences. And when I started doing some of my favorite technique or ways of thinking when it comes just to plein air, which my version of plein air is completely different than everyone's expected preconceived notion of plein air, so I run into so many problems with that. But it was when I started painting in a sketchbook, because like I said, I put something in my way that will physically stop me from thinking how I don't want to think. So instead of like, well, if you have to paint these beautiful plein air paintings or these beautiful landscape paintings on a canvas that have to go to a gallery that must sell, I'm like, okay, then I'm going to paint on shitty paper in a book that I can't then sell. Like, this is just for me. It was just for me. So on that paper, I started plein air painting how I wanted, and it grew and grew and grew, and now I enjoy it, and I do it my way. And that carried into the studio work, and that idea keeps coming up. I'll work on something that shouldn't possibly be concerned with selling, because I know that's a poison, and so I can do everything I could in the beginning of my artistic career to remove that from the situation, so that I just paint what I love for myself.
So that could be because one of the other questions, that always shows up is like, what's the clue to your success? Like,
yeah.
It's just like doing what you love.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an easy answer. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, what next? Well, just work from there.
Yeah.
Do what you love.
True.
But I have to pay for stuff. I have to live. Like, well, then you might want to start living the way you love. And yeah, you could talk about that for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah,
but that's the key. That is the clue.
They have a lot of questions.
I know
it's like very intense and immersive week for them. And well, by the way, they are interested in like, how did you think about this concept of boot camps, how to call it, and not a usual workshop? What it was that made you think about it?
So tired of the workshop idea, like because I've read many times and I felt and I believed what I saw was like, you're just not going to learn from watching somebody paint. You're just not. And I don't want people to paint like me. And I don't think it's good for people to learn to paint like me. I think they should learn to paint like themselves. But there's this standard across the world that, you know, of course, people love this artist, and so they want to paint like him. And we think that's wrong, and the other way to do it is right, but it's a lot harder. So we have to be a lot harder on them. And I've sat through many, many critiques in my life, and it's, you know, here's my painting, like, that's very nice, oh, this is wrong, but that's very nice. And I'm like, well, let's remove the two nice parts. So, and that's like really like kick them in the ass, because you're going to have to do that on your own in a studio. And, you know, all these critiques in school, like, oh, nice, oh, cool, oh, that's okay, but you should fix this. And like, graduate, good luck. And then they're just lost in the world. They're not as hard a worker. And I even highlighted in the paper we passed out from that one artist, I forget which book, actually I know which book it is, I just don't have it in my head right now, that he said coddling never made a good artist.
Yeah,
and there's too much coddling in the world, because now art has lost its, I'm going to say, I have not found the right word for it. There was science, math, art. That's how it's always been. And now everyone's grandma is an artist, and now everyone is an artist. No, not every. You don't look at a scientist's plan for building a rocket ship to the moon and go, ooh, I don't like the way you drew that up. I don't think that's going to work. You just don't, because that's stupid. But everyone seems they can say the same thing about a painting or an artist. So there's a problem there. And I think, yeah, so stop the coddling, ass kick people. And this whole week, I mean, I know, we threw a lot of information on them, and their brains are just fucked. And now they're like, we have 1,000 more questions. I'm like, I know, but I pretty much answered all of them. You just have to go back through your notes and be like, shit, okay, do what I like.
Yeah, but they loved it.
Good.
They really loved it. In fact, there's some people asking if there is going to be a phase 2 to see just how they evolved. Yeah, some people are asking, is there going to be a phase 2? Like,
oh, phase 2?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're going to keep putting their art out there, we'll know. You know, like, we'll see them. If they show up in another part of the world in galleries and just like blowing the minds of people, I'd be like, all right, that's phase 2, you did it, you know? And if they don't, like I said, there's only one in a group of hundreds that could ever be what they want to be.
Well,
we're hoping to change that.
If you ever think about a phase 2, you know, you're welcome. So that's it. We could gather the same people.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's like
but they have a lot of things going on.
It's like we say, every time we do a workshop like this, at the end of it, we're like, never again. Never, never again. Jeez, so much, so exhausted. But then we do it again.
Yeah, you didn't keep working, actually. I think I didn't see you walking in the whole week. You were running everywhere, like non-stopping, like, so it was incredible how given you are in that sense, both of you. I mean,
passion.
Yeah,
we are both very passionate
I think
about.
That's one of the most interesting things that they should have learned, and being passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not that much, because another question that shows up is like, how do you balance hard work, because you really work hard, and talent? I mean, can one compensate the lack of the other? Like hard work and talent, if you have a lack of talent, hard work can make it, or vice versa?
I think it needs to be both together. In fact, I probably know who asked that question, because I told it to him. Unless it's a recurring thing, like, he's like, what do you think about talent? And I'm like, well, talent is just really, really hard work, and then balanced with doing what you love. And everyone calls it a talent, he's a genius. You know, and that's the thing, like, that sort of issue was addressed in each one of the things we passed out from other artists of all different centuries. Like, they think that the person's a genius because he's so brilliant, but they don't talk about the hard practice and study and time it took to get to a point that when they just wake up one day, they're like, oh, I got it. You know, everyone focuses on the, oh, I got it. But they don't realize all the effort they put into figuring it out, and the figuring out in the realm of the things they love. And that's why they look like talent and genius. And I say, like I told them in the beginning, like, the things about drawing, composition, like the fundamentals of art and the ability to draw and paint can be taught to anybody. So people are like, oh, I can only draw a stick figure. I'm like, well, I know you can now, but if you give me a year or two, I could show you how to draw this. Whether or not you're going to take that to the next step and be a genius about it because you love what you do and you're putting your own vision into it, that's your problem. But it's like those things can be taught, but the talent and the genius is when it comes the next step. And they have to take that next step.
I think they're somehow worried about reaching the bar, you know, like there's been a lot of applications for your workshop and they go like, oh, why have I been chosen? Which is my bar to get there? So they're concerned about that thing, like your criteria, why did you choose them? So I have to make it, and like he may have some expectations.
Before they applied, or?
Yeah, because you know, like they were selected, so it's like, oh, I gotta hit the bar.
That was the fun part.
Was it?
And I'm sure they asked those questions before dinner, because last night I was like, Jesus, I told them, you know, a minute ago, and I'll tell you guys now. And like everyone's like, why did you pick us? And I told them it's because, yeah, we put the application process in place for a workshop, which is unheard of, because we wanted a good group of people. Because I wanted a specific group of people who were there, who would be able to handle what we were going to do to them. That's important. We wanted a mixture. So there were people interested in writing, they were interested in fashion, they were interested in illustration, they were interested in painting, they were interested in science. Like each person was a little like superhero in their own right, and when you put them all together, we had this amazing like group of, you know, Dungeons and Dragons players. But they also had to show an open mind. They had to be able to accept what we were going to do. So they had to show a little bit of open-mindedness. And then they also had to show at least some level of skill. Some level. At least some level. Because I wasn't, like I said, we're not just going to teach people how to draw and paint. And so people who just came to want to learn how to draw and paint, we didn't want them here. That's a different kind of workshop. And I remember reading a lot of, before this workshop and while the application process was going on, I remember reading a lot of things on like the poison of social media. Where like, yeah, I wanted to apply, but once I saw the questions, I'm like, that's so stupid. What is he looking for? And I'm like, thank good, because I don't want you in this place. Because you see the end result. I saw it on their faces, and I hope that they you know, people were crying, and like, that's good. I want to make people cry. In a good way.
Sense,
yeah, good cries.
No, but you really got to make a really good group. I mean, it was an amazing group all this week. And so, and what's your biggest takeaway from this group of amazing people? What do you learn from them?
Just that it's possible. You know, we do this workshop kind of thing because we want to live in a world where there's more creative, open, brilliant thinkers doing what they want to do, and that's the world we want to live in. And I don't see it happening. In fact, I see it going the other way. And so we're like, well, we got to fight back. Like Einstein said, there's a human right and responsibility to stand up against the things you don't believe are correct. You have to say you don't think things are good, and you have to fight against it. It's your responsibility as a person. So we're going to go out and try and make the world we want to live in. And now I'm hoping, let's say there's 18 people, let's just pray that like 10 of them do and they get to that point. That's great, because then there's probably 10 people scattered around the world where I could show up on their doorstep homeless and they'd help me. You know, because we're in that brotherhood now. There's that water table under the world of artists, and they're everywhere. And you could show up anywhere and be like best friends. That's what we want, and that's what I think I took away, like a little bit of hope, you know, and a lot of exhaustion.
Yeah, which is not a little thing, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in your own particular case, if you need some advice, who do you talk to?
Friends, trusted friends, partners, you know, the people you care and trust about the most. You're going to listen to their advice. You know, it's the same as the opposite. I don't want to listen to the opinion and advice of a world with tastes that I don't agree with. And so we really value our friends. And they're not just art friends, they're creative, brilliant thinkers in whatever they do. And they're scattered all over the world, and if I need help, I mean, I can always just write to people and just start writing and have a great conversation about, like, I just need help with this, and they understand that in the same way they write me. And we always try to bring these friends together in quiet moments in like a cabin in Tahoe, or when we visit other countries, and just get together and just have those moments of reaffirmation that we're doing okay. But they're all there, and so we turn to friends.
I guess it's related to things you mentioned a lot during this week, which are integrity and sincerity as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because somehow we can say that you have to deal with your ego. I mean, like, you gotta have it locked before you enter the studio.
Mm-hmm.
That's necessary, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not great. You're not this master genius, even though people keep trying to say that. And like, because I don't like that feeling. And art in itself is conceited in general, and I see a lot of conceited and ego out there in the world, and I don't think that's a good thing. I don't like to be around those people. So, yeah, you have to fight that.
Well, and we're reaching the end of the interview, and well, they also have some edgy questions. So, like, someone wonders if you ever wondered that your painting may be objectifying women. Did you ever think about that?
I hear that a lot, and recently I was trying to find new models, because models are the hardest thing for me to find these days for obvious reasons, and I think, again, art's lost its worth in these days. So when I see paintings and I see the muses and the models in those paintings, I wonder, like, God, what's that story there? Because I've had experiences with good friends and good muses who are just the most brilliant, beautiful people, and I love painting them, and I've also had really bad ones, and it's just, when I tried to say, like, okay, I want to change this, instead of just handing models a handful of cash, I want to give them a percentage of the sales from the paintings of them. Because in that sense, not only do I not feel bad if I don't get what I want, it helps me then push myself when I direct. And there's so many more views and ideas that I want to create. And that way I'll push myself a little further to direct better. And if they really want to, like, create as well, which that's all I want, someone great to create with, that has a look that I'm looking for, then that's exactly what I want. And then I will feel better paying them thousands of dollars for that help, instead of just a handful of cash so they can call it a thing. But when it comes to objectifying them, I paint women how I feel about them. I feel that they're beautiful creatures. They are things that should not see, and that's the thing. When I said things in my post on Instagram, all these trying to find the models, such a feedback that was nauseating. And apparently there's something going on in America right now which has never stopped, about, like, some politician and all that shit, which is a whole other thing. But they are women, perhaps the most beautiful thing in the world, in my opinion, just as much as nature and a sunset. I mean, and I believe that I paint them in these melancholy, sad ways, which people think is weak. But what I see that is a statement of, that's sad because you don't do that. You don't kick a kitten. You don't hurt something that beautiful. You do not throw your trash out into nature. You do not poison the earth. Women, Mother Earth, same feeling. And when I get that feedback from a lot of people, like, oh, objective, like, I just think, what, your head is wrapped in a different problem, and please don't come into my house and have that disrespect because you don't understand what I'm trying to say. Yes, perhaps, when I hear that, I rethink, am I saying it right? And that's why I love these beautiful creatures surrounded by so much destruction, and, like, especially in the film. The film is a great way to say it, because here they are. I'm trying to make them as beautiful as I can, with as many, like, the painterly harmony qualities to it, because that is nature's best balance and composition and beautiful. But the film and the way I develop it and the way I mess with it gets so destroyed that it becomes like a memory. and almost like a lost memory of something that was beautiful, which is what I think and feel about the way the world is going, nature, women, my feeling of it, all of that. So that's like a 10% feeling of it, and it's hard to talk about because you do come up against people's like, and I don't want to deal with that.
I think it's impossible nowadays not to offend anybody.
Right. I mean, and everyone loves saying how they're offended, but they don't actually stand up behind their position. Yeah. It's so easy to start say something online and have a fight. But that's why I love confronting people in person. Like, yes, please tell me your views in person, and they can't. And either there or they struggle. And so it's like, do it in person. But it's just, that rarely happens in person. Rarely. And that's why I feel like, okay, the people who understand.
Just like now.
Yeah.
And, another thing that someone is worried about is some kind of risk of, when you're mastering something, because you insist on mastering your palette, mastering your tools. Is it a risk of falling into a repetitive formula?
No, because I think you need that repetitive formula to master something. I mean, that's okay. You want to master basketball? Keep shooting until you find the way that works best for you, and there you've mastered it. The worry that is probably the question there is what happens when you do master it. And I kept talking about this workshop. That's the plateau. That's when you hit that ceiling. And they need to have that wherewithal of to realize when they plateau and when they hit that ceiling. And if you plateau and you stay there, you may be an amazing craftsman, but if you want to push yourself further, you need to try and master something else by throwing something in the way. So I think mastering and the repetition of it is important. It's the plateau that's the scary part. And when you need to go above that, how do you do that?
Yeah. So, and one question that obviously shows up. I mean, your nickname is like Red Rabbit 7, and what's about rabbits?
I don't know. It's from somewhere from my childhood. Like we were telling them all, you come from somewhere in your childhood, which is very important. I've held on to that for my entire life because that's me as a child, and half of me is child still, balanced with half of that. Supposedly I'm an adult as well, so I balance both of those things, and I don't even realize it. But it's also now become my moniker, my symbol. I love the idea of rabbits. They're little animals out in the world. I mean, I always had cats. So rabbits were like, oh, there's a rabbit. You can't have those as pets. And they're adorable, they're amazing, they're hidden. It's sort of perhaps my personality a little bit. The number 7, is important to me for my birthday and for many other reasons. And, everyone always has a number thing. And it's just like, I've had that since I was a kid. And I think it's important to keep that childlike love in your adult years.
I don't want to end this interview without you telling us again the story about the lettuce and the banana.
The lettuce and the banana, oh yeah. That was at another workshop where I was trying to show people, like, one of my changing formative moments was it doesn't matter what's in your hands, it matters what's in your head. And I was so exhausted. And this was a huge, long workshop that we were doing. And I always realized, okay, if I'm going to say it, I need to put my money where my mouth. I need to I don't want to put my foot in my mouth and not do what I say. And so I was in the middle of painting. I was painting Nadezhda when she was modeling for me, and I was painting her. And I said that. I'm like, it just doesn't matter what's in your hand. And I'm like, so let me fucking show you. And I looked around. I had a banana and a piece of lettuce. And so I'm like, here you go. And they're all laughing. I love joking because it lightens the mood. And it's like, but I'm very serious. And you watch. And I was started painting with a banana. And I was in the quickest flashes, what they would hopefully see was me trying to use the tool and figuring out what it can and cannot do and if it works for me or not. And that's what I've been telling the whole time. Like, when you do something, question, is that what I like? Yes, keep doing it. Is it not what I like? Then don't ever do that again. And so you make a mark with the banana, it doesn't work. Okay, make a mark, it doesn't work. Peel it? Ugh, no, I can't do that. So I kept working on it, and it started making the most amazing blending that I've ever seen. You try with a sponge, you try with a rag, you try with your finger, and oh my God, a banana is the most amazing blending tool. It's not rubber, it's organic. It's organic, so it doesn't last forever. So halfway through the painting, I'm like, okay guys, at this point, and I kept working with it, and I think I stopped talking, and they stopped laughing, and they're like, uh-oh, he's right, it doesn't matter. I was still working with it. The lettuce doesn't work. Oh. So yeah, the lettuce I tried, and that was a great example too. I'm like, okay, you have to know when things don't work for you. And then I said, like, if lettuce is a brush for you, you should know instantaneously.
So we can go bananas.
We can go bananas. Yes, exactly.
And well, just for ending, what about this immersive experience of living 24/7 with the students? How has your experience been with us here in Menorca Pulsar?
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Like when I hope I kept saying it to you guys. I was saying it to them. This is one of the best situations for learning for artists, surrounded constantly, away from the world, in a beautiful place that's inspiring, and you're always in it. You're always in it. You can't turn it off. And if you're here to learn, that's how it's going to be. And that's what I want in the future, is a situation just like that, because that's the perfect place to be. Yeah, Menorca is the perfect place for this. What you guys have going is the perfect place to learn.
Thank you. Well, you'll be welcome anytime. And
careful, I will show up here homeless one day, just like you said, anytime.
Yeah, you got a home here. So let's cheers to that. Cheers. And hope to see you again, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.